Zachariah Branch is one of the most explosive prospects in the 2026 NFL draft class. The question, John, is he a good NFL player or is he a good fantasy football player? Is he somewhere in between? Is he none of the above? There's a lot of questions around Zachariah Branch. We're going to get into it here. We're going to break down his fantasy football value. We're going to start by looking at the player background. We're going to get into the all 22 tape. Look at that Georgia season versus first two USC years. And then we're going to look at some key analytic benchmarks that you have laid out for the wide receiver position. We're going to put it all together. We're going to wrap it up here with some actionable fantasy football advice. John, before we get into it, we always ask our viewers, if you're watching on YouTube here and you learn even one new thing, just give us a like. It takes 1 second. We really appreciate it. The views have been absolutely outstanding this year. Like really outstanding, and we appreciate that support. I do also, John, I want to make a special plug. I talk about it each and every week. Head on over to patreon.com. Support us, support our work. You've got the rookie rankings, the Discord. But more than ever this week, John, the Monday the 16th, so whether you're watching here on Sunday night to this episode or checking it out after Monday, Volume 1 of the 2026 Rookie Guide is coming out. I just finished it up before recording this. 121 pages, 86 full profiles breaking down fantasy football value, college production profiles, film review. I mean, I just don't believe anybody's going deeper than 86 profiles in this class, and I've watched every single one of them. So a longer intro than normal, John, but I had to make the plug. Let's get into it here. Let's start by talking about the prospect context, the background here for Zachariah Branch, because there's a lot of background.
As I've been studying him in detail over about the last 6 weeks, I'm now convinced that the NFL industrial scouting complex likes this young man more than I do. I do see the upside. Yet there are a lot of concerns that I don't hear the national media or many people talking about. So we're going to take a look at him now, and we're going to analyze him for fantasy. First, at the combine, we all knew he was fast, right, Matt? I mean, There's no denying how fast he was. And people at the combine, I think they're double counting his speed. He recorded a 4.35 in the 40-yard dash, which is obviously impressive. But we knew that if you had studied the film. So who is this young man coming out of high school? He's a 5-star recruit from Nevada. I've heard about him in the Devi streets for a real long time now. He was the number 1 wide receiver overall coming out. He was the number 1 prospect in his home state, and he was the number 7 prospect overall in the nation. So he enters college with a massive, massive tail behind him. Wind, I should say. As a senior, he caught 45 catches, 753 yards, and 11 touchdowns. He had 5 punt returns for 90 yards. That's 18 yards a return. He was named to the 2022 Nevada Preps All-Southern Nevada first team, and he played in the 2023 Under Armour All-American game. He enrolls at USC under Lincoln Riley in that kind of, amazing passing game that Riley puts together at USC, and he spent his first 2 seasons in Los Angeles. As a true freshman, he did get on the field, 31 receptions, 320 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He earned the Jet Award, which was Outstanding Return Specialist. He had 16 punt returns for 332 yards and a touchdown. He was named to numerous all-freshman teams. And as a sophomore, he began to pop a little bit. 47 catches for 503 yards and 1 touchdown. Afterwards, he transfers in the spring of 2025 to Georgia. He posted his best season as a Bulldog last year, 81 catches for 811 yards and 6 touchdowns. He actually helped me win 2 college fantasy football leagues because he was a monster in PPR formats. He was named All-SEC second team at wide receiver and All-SEC third team as an all-purpose player. For his career, he had 44 punt returns for 586 yards and a touchdown. He also rushed 15 times for 94 yards and a touchdown. But Matt, We're going to talk about his model in more detail later, but I'm going to say this. I've seen profiles like this. He reminds me very much of Rondell Moore and Malachi Corley. So I'm clearly lower on him than everyone else. But let's take some look at film for all of our viewers.
Yeah, I think the film is really important to understand who Zachariah Branch is, right? Because you are going to see a lot of targets at or near the line of scrimmage. And
oh yeah,
for folks who might be new to this here, we show every target from 2 games worth of film we cut up here. So
is this Florida?
This is Florida here, but you could see, he's very twitchy, he's explosive, he redirects well, he gets in and out of his cuts. Georgia will put him in motion a lot.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely manufactured targets. There's
my God, yeah.
There's no running away from that. But what I want folks to keep an eye on, and we'll of course point it out once we get there. There are examples where he wins downfield, and it's drawn me in, John. I'm seeing who he can be. And Florida did use him. Here's one right here. Nice catch over the middle of the field on a post route. He gets clobbered on the way down. He holds on well. I mean, he's catching that ball off target. That's physical. That's tough.
Yeah, he took a hit.
Nice slant route right here. Look at the yards after catch. I mean, he is fast, man. There's a difference. There's a difference between a 40-yard time, running in a straight line fast. He's quick. Like he is.
Oh yeah.
He's speedy. He accelerates well. He's not just a, run straight down the seam kind of fast.
Yeah, you know what? When I watch the film, you can almost tell when Georgia is going to throw him the ball. Almost every time I felt like he went in motion, the ball was going towards him on a quick throw.
He reacted really well, I thought, to that ball. That was a nice late adjustment. Actually, 2 good examples of late adjustment. Yep. This year, we've got the Sugar Bowl game. So this was CFP, I believe, against Ole Miss. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you can see this a target downfield. He doesn't end up coming up with that ball. One thing I noticed too, you kind of get a different perspective when you're cutting up the film. When the offense stalled out, they tended to go to him to try to just shake things up, like just make a play. Look at that. I mean, look at that elusiveness.
Yeah, I agree with you. There was a lot of games where I saw he had 1 or 2 catches in the first half, and then he would have 6 or 7 in the second half when Georgia had a score. He did become their kind of go-to guy.
Yeah, like when they needed to crack it open a little bit, right?
Yes.
Look at this. Good example here. Look at that catch. I mean, come on. Like that's not Kadarius Toney. That's not Malachi Corley, right? Like, am I totally off base on this?
No, you're not totally off base, and it frustrated me watching his film, Matt.
Yeah,
how they used him, because there are glimpses of him being a good receiver.
Right. You see those reliable hands, right? You see that ability to win in traffic. I mean, obviously the twitchy athleticism jumps out. One thing I think we don't talk about enough with his athleticism is for how twitchy he is. I think he controls his body well. I think he plays underneath himself, which is not something you always see from these types of players. He's elusive after the catch. And Yak is, for me, like, you can't only be a Yak receiver. That needs to be a plus on top of your profile, right? So I do see that as a plus on top of his profile, some of the other things we've talked about. His weaknesses, he does run a limited route tree, right? I don't think you see a lot of refinement. He doesn't have the best release. He doesn't have the best technicality through his routes. And he's got a small frame. So we actually saw him win in multiple contested catch situations. You can't assume that's going to translate to the next level, right? Like, the corners are bigger. They're more physical. So the question we always get down to, John, right, is how does he actually plug into the projection sheet, right? Because that's what I'm all about here. What's the actual, I should say, fantasy football production, and how do we make him work, or can we make him work, right? In terms of output, plugging him into our lineup. And, this isn't hypothetical. I have a projection sheet that is available to all Rookie Big Bard patrons. So folks, if this is your 20th, 21st rookie profile, and you've been listening to me talk about the projections and the rookie guide all the way through, now's the time. It's all out there now, folks. But anyways, let's put him into the spreadsheet, right? At Georgia in his final season, 75% catch rate, 4.8% drop rate. That's good hands. And so, we don't have to beat up on the guy, but I wouldn't say Gunnar Stockton is what you think of as a primetime accurate Georgia quarterback, right? I mean,
that's a fair statement, Matt.
yeah. So I think you can realistically project him with a catch rate, 70 to 73% as a rookie. That's a really high mark to hit. The question's going to be, how far downfield are those targets? Because it's great to have a 72% catch rate, but if you have a, yards per reception of 8.5, that's not going to get us where we want to get to, right? So this is what's so interesting to me, John. His yards per reception at Georgia was 10.2. His ADOT was 5.2. That is a huge gap. He had an average of 8 yards after catch per reception. That's ridiculous. So he is doing a lot after the catch, which, it's not the most exciting thing to see. So you're probably thinking 10 and a half total yards per reception. That's not a great number for a projection sheet. It's not a terrible number. It's not a great number. 9 career touchdowns. That's concerning. 6 touchdowns, though, in 2025 with Georgia. Remember, first 2 seasons at USC, Georgia had 24 total passing touchdowns. So Zach Branch having 6 out of those 24, that gives me more hope than I originally thought in terms of touchdown production for him. Probably still in the 4 or 5 range as a rookie. So I think that's where I'm setting him up as. We're going to talk about at the end here where that translates to fantasy football production and give a value comparison. But before we do that, John, we've talked about the film. We need to compare that to your key analytic benchmarks here, right? You've got 6 stats that you're looking for wide receiver prospects to clear in order for you to feel confident in their ability to produce at the next level. How does Zach Branch line up against your 6 key stats?
First thing I want to say, we didn't mention his size. At the combine, he came in at 5'9", 177. We kind of knew he was on the smaller side. Yeah. 177 is a little better than I thought. I was worried
that he might good, yeah.
Yeah, I was worried he'd come in at like 168. So I was okay with that, but it's not a big dominant size. So I do think he's going to be limited to the slot and put in motion. I think he's a limited NFL player in the offense. So I put him in my model, and he only hits 2 of the 6 key benchmarks that I'm looking for. So that's probably why I'm lower on him than other analysts. I do see the ceiling, but my question remains, what are the odds that he reaches his ceiling at the NFL level? The 2 things that he clears in career receptions for 3 seasons. So he's an early guy. He comes out quickly. He immediately got on the field. He had 159 receptions in 3 years on college. That's really impressive. Matt, I concur. I think he has very good hands. He had an 80% catch rate this year. Very happy with that. So those are things, also some of the film that we just saw where he makes big catches down the field. My big red flags, Matt, and why I compared him to Malachi Corley and Rondell Moore. His ADOT, 3.6. Matt, he's in a bucket, a percentile that is extremely low. We do not have a lot of examples of players who have gone on to NFL success with that type of ADOT. But then you mentioned it. His yards per reception, 10.3. But that's an 7-yard difference, Matt. That's
wild.
That's wild, dude. So then I have to ask myself, will he be able to gain that type of yak yardage in the NFL? It's going to be dependent on the scheme. He's not the biggest man, and we know that safeties and defensive backs tackle better and they're bigger at the NFL level. So that's a red flag. His team dominator. Despite being the alpha male, he still only had 26% of the total targets for Georgia this year. I'm always looking for about 30%. It's not awful, but he does miss it. And his receiving yards per team pass attempt, I mentioned this. I'm looking for a benchmark of 2.5. He falls below 2, 1.94. So I have really 3 large concerns in my model, which is why I'm lower on him than most. I do see the special teams utility. He clearly has utility on special teams. But Matt, why should fantasy fans be interested in Zachariah Branch?
Yeah, I think in terms of draft capital, for me, he's fairly locked into a top 50 pick. I think NFL teams
I
are
think
really
that's
going to
fair.
want him to be a piece of their offense. They're going to want to use him on special teams, right? We're going to see probably 8, 9, 10 receivers go off the board in the top 50. I think Zachariah Branch is just going to be one of those guys. I think for all the concerns we've laid out, John, despite that draft capital, probably a mid-second round pick, right? I just mentioned it. There could be, he could be a top 50 pick and 9 wide receivers could go before him, and I think with the analytical profile, some folks are just going to take them off their boards in terms of rookie drafts. So 205 to 208 in a super flex league. You drop that 204, 207 in a one quarterback league. I think that's just about where his rookie ADP is going to fall. So, John, I'm always trying to give a comparison for a player that produced in a similar way this past season. I think Zach Branch was understandably a tougher guy to land on a comparison with, but I found Khalil Shakur. So Khalil Shakur finished as wide receiver 36 this past year. He had a 75% catch rate, pretty close, right, to what I talked about for Zachariah Branch. 10 yards per reception. I think that's probably just about where he's going to land. 4 touchdowns. I think that's where Zachariah Branch could find himself.
I agree.
The key question is going to be like Khalil Shakur, he had 95 targets. So will Zach Branch be in an offense with 95 targets? I don't think he'll be in an offense with Josh Allen, right? But, what's quarterback play? And what's the volume of targets? If I could get Zach Branch in my projection sheet above 80 targets without forcing it or without trying too hard, then he's going to be somebody that I want some healthy exposure to. 11 to 25%. I'm not going over the top here, but I just want to make this point, John, because I think you're right. Everything you're saying, is lining up with the rules that I have set in my mind for manufactured targets. Like, I am the guy. I was the guy that went against consensus with Kadarius Toney. I was the guy that was just slamming Malachi Corley and like Savion Williams even last year. We were able to steer folks off of him, right? Like, I am that guy. But with all of those other guys, I never saw the downfield playability that I can see on Zach Branch's tape. So there's enough there for me to just bend my rules a little bit, but it's got to be the right price. It's got to be the right landing spot because it's all about value. But John, folks don't have to wait until their rookie drafts to find really good value. They can just head to the link in the episode description, get the 2026 Rookie Guide, Volume 1, 121 pages. Volume 2 drops no later than the Monday after the NFL draft with updated seasonal projections in the guide for each and every player, 86 player profiles, full rookie Devy dynasty rankings available on the website as well. Patreon.com/rookiebigboard. Get in for as low as $5 a month. John, we're going to be back soon with another rookie profile real soon.